I'm Leslie Rowe-Israelson. I have been a glass artist for the past 40 years, and for the past 30 years have been working with zircon refractory composites to help glass artists to have a mold material that is extremely functional, that has many opportunities for crisp, clean molds, and that's what I would like to show you today. So this is Mold Mix 6 that I'm going to be discussing, and Mold Mix 6 is a high performance ceramic composite material, and once painted onto your wax positive or your clay positive, it will give a beautiful, refined, and the designs will come out absolutely beautiful. So that's what I would like to walk you through today. I've laid out on this table some different samples that we're going to be able to go over. So this is the piece that we're going to mold today with the horse images. And on the table I have a hand mixer, which I'll need for mixing some of the Mold Mix 6, just to break up some of the fibers. We'll discuss the boron nitride and the graphite later, but we also need to discuss the release that is sprayed onto your wax positive before you start putting on the Mold Mix 6 when it's an open face piece and you want it to release. So if you come over here, I'll show you some of the smaller items that I've gotten ready to show you that are small little open face molds that are for, you could use them for jewelry, you could use them for adding to sculptural pieces. So this is the wax, and from there we painted on the Mold Mix 6 onto our wax, like so. Painted it on, pulled it off. There's your imagery, and you can paint on, if you've sprayed on the universal mold release onto your wax, you can use this one sculptural piece over again, if no undercuts, to make multiple molds. But you can also, out of your Mold Mix 6, get multiple glass pieces that just pop right out of the mold. And the same here is a slightly larger piece, just to show you how to, so you sculpt your wax, paint on the Mold Mix 6, dry out your mold in the kiln, apply kiln wash and boron nitride for your release, and fill it with glass, and then you get a beautiful sculpture that will come out every time from your mold, and you can reuse your mold again. And that's what we're talking about, multiple pieces. I'd quickly like to also discuss the margins of your wax around your sculptural piece. So it's very important to give it, at least half an to 3/4 of an inch, half an inch to 3/4 of an inch around the sculpture that you are trying to achieve. You are trying to get a feather. So basically, there's your feather in wax, and you can see how far out I've come with where I'm going to be painting on the Mold Mix 6. Mold Mix 6 sometimes has a tendency to curl around the edges. So if I don't want this mold distorted, I want to be able to have enough wax on the outside that it's not going to curl just around the edges. And this particular one was just a small little piece of horses to test the glass for your larger sculptural piece, which is really fun to do sometimes. And from there, I just want to show you, so this was a multiple little mountain scenes that we were working on, my twin sister and I, and this is how easily it comes out of the mold. There's your piece, there's your glass, there's your sculptural piece finished, and you're ready to go again. If you have no undercuts with your original, once the glass is cast, this should just pop right out of your mold, and you are now ready to make more of your original piece. So there's your mold, there's your glass sculpture, and it shows you there's very minimal cold working. On this particular piece, there's no cold working at all. You just have a really nice, lovely mountain piece to share with others. What I'd really like to show you is one-of-a-kind slumpy molds made out of the mold mix 6. This allows you to have a shape that you really love and use it as a slumping mold that can be used on multiple times to create this particular shape in glass. And it just offers you so many different avenues of creating your own style, your own visual voice with the glass, with the mold mix 6 one-of-a-kind molds. Then I want to talk about how to do very complicated sculptural pieces, painting on the mold mix 6 onto a three-dimensional sculpture. And with the mold mix 6, you just get such a beautiful release. You get no cracks in the molding whatsoever, and the glass comes out really lovely. So that's why I'm in love with mold mix 6, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you the different uses that you can use with the mold mix 6. Here I am in my home studio, and I just wanted to show you a couple of the larger pieces that are able to be created with mold mix 6. Once you get really good at painting on your mold mix 6 and understanding how it works, you can then go really large with some beautiful big pieces. This piece isn't a multiple piece. This is a one piece sculpture. I would like to talk about this piece and how intricate it is. And this piece in particular will not be a multiple mold. It would be a one-of-a-kind mold, and you can just see some of the detail that you can get from using the mold mix 6. That gives you really good detail. So first of all, I'm going to start off by showing you some wax positive that I've created with some horses in it with lots of detail. This has lots of detail in this particular piece, but it is also a piece that has absolutely no undercuts. And with no undercuts, Zircon Refractory, the mold mix 6, allows us to be able to have a mold that we can use on multiple occasions. So it's not just a one-off, it is a mold that can be used over again. And basically I made a plaster mold out of the wax that I created, so that this plaster mold can then be soaked in water, pour wax into it, pour the wax, put the whole piece under water, and the wax floats to the top, and that gives you your positive to be able to work on. This part of the video I'm going to show you how to paint on your mold mix 6. It will take layers, and in between each layer you let it dry. So the first layer is always a little bit trickier, as you have to cover the whole mold as fairly quickly as you can, but also once you start, you'll find that it will want to veil, it will want to separate from the wax, and you just keep painting it on. So you just scoop out your mold mix 6 into a smaller container. Put it down. I love to use this kind of a little scoop as I go. And then absolutely seal the main container that you scooped out of, so that no air dries in between the layers that you're doing. And you take your soft brush and pick up the mold mix 6 in your nice little brush, give it a little mixing. Oopsies. Sometimes you drop your paintbrush, But anyways, you'll see how it's almost like thick cream is the consistency that you want. This is a very nice batch. And you just start painting on your Mold Mix 6. Very carefully. It's not going to be a thick layer, the first layer. It's going to be a thin layer. And you can see how it's almost wanting to separate from the wax, but just keep going. Keep painting it on until you've completely finished the whole, all the way around your piece. And I really like to work on a turntable so that I can turn it around as I go. And you'll notice it's veiling slightly, but that's okay. Just keep on going and come back to that spot. Just keep putting it on. Just keep brushing. This is a very good mix. And basically, I'll just keep going until I've got the whole thing covered, and I'll come back and show you how far I got. But you can see you're not thick on this first layer. And with the fibers, you're trying to blend those fibers so that it's almost like weaving a blanket. This is a really nice batch with fibers in it. And that gives you the strength at the end to be able to use this mold over and over again. So there's a good sample of how it begins to stay on without veiling anymore. And as you're painting on the Mold Mix 6, I have taken my container and I have closed it again and put a smaller amount in a smaller container, as I don't want the air to get to the Mold Mix 6 because it dries. As you can see, I just keep working through the project. You'll see little bits that start to kind of veil off. Just keep going over it gently. Don't make deep sections of your sculpture. Don't make them thick with Mold Mix 6. Try to keep a consistent layer for your first layer, just to make sure that all the detail is in there, because you don't want it has to dry from the inside out, basically. That's why you're putting a thin layer on first, and just keep working it. See how there's a little bit of veiling here. Just come back. There's no rush, but you can't be too slow either. So just keep moving your brush around. Just fix those little tiny dark spots of wax that you see poking through, and just keep right on going. But just try not to make your first layer in deep sections thick at all. You can see how we're getting you can still see the pattern. You can still see the detail on your horse and your leaves and your bushes. So just keep coming back gently and just give it a brush and just work through the whole project. Okay, so I've got the first layer on, and you can still see some of the detail. I've taken it in my little scoop here, and I'm giving a good little mix it makes it nice and smooth when you give it a little stir in here. Clean your brush really well. Come back, and now you're just going to touch up the areas that you can still see the detail. This is still the first layer. Now I'm just making sure that nothing's going to crack, and you just go over all the little dark spots where you can see the wax. And this is going to be the first layer, and then we get a hair dryer and turn it on to cool, and just get a nice little cool breeze blowing on the first layer of Mold Mix 6, just to dry it as best you can. Like I said, you're going from the inside out, so you want it as dry as possible before you put on the next layer. So if you put your finger on the Mold Mix 6 and it comes back white, you're not ready to go. It has to come back as no Mold Mix 6 on your finger, and that will determine your next layer. But for now, just go back and touch up all the little spots where you see the wax still, and that will be your first layer. So there we go. and I'll be back to you on the second layer. And now you can see I have a really nice layer on the first layer. All the way around, the edges are you don't see any of the dark little spots of wax anymore, very softly. No thickness in the deep areas, all as smooth as can be. So now I'm going to take the next layer and I'm going to take a hand mixer and I'm going to mix this layer up to bust up some of the beautiful fibers that we want in here. It just makes it nice and runny. See how beautiful that is? I don't know if you can see that. It just makes it really nice and makes it thin. After you've whizzed up another section of Mold Mix 6 with your handheld mixer, you'll see how beautiful and smooth it is. Now is the time when it's nice and almost like thick cream, and you can just go back and completely cover very carefully all the little sections. See how nice and soft it is? How runny, a little more runny it is with the handheld mixer. Try not to capture little bubbles, and now just go back and correct some of the places where you can still see the wax with this particular mixture. And this will give you a beautiful first coat. So you've whizzed up all the fibers, you've made it nice and soft and beautiful, and it really fills in all the areas that you need. So now just keep on going until the next layer. In this portion of the video, I just wanted to show you that the first layer and the first and a half layer, basically. So you've got your first layer on, then I put on I whizzed up with the hand mixer, the second little batch, and then put your hand mixer in a tub of water so that all the fibers and everything can fall off it, because otherwise it gets quite hard and it could ruin your hand mixer. And you can hopefully see that I've got a beautiful smooth mold now. All the dark areas of the wax are covered. It gets a little bit thicker down at the bottom, and that's okay, because we're going to build up that bottom layer a little stronger than the top, which I'll show you after. But for now, it looks like I'm baking a cake, doesn't it? But no, it's going to be a great mold. And I am believing that I'm going to use 2 quarts for this particular mold by the time I'm done. So that'll give you an idea of how much for a 12-inch by 12-inch mold. You're going to need 2 quarts of Mold Mix 6. And like I said, when you open 1 quart, close the lid tight and seal it back up again as you're working, because you don't want the air to dry your Mold Mix 6. This Mold Mix 6 has beautiful fibers in it. I'm super happy with it. And anyway, so now I'm going to just take my hairdryer. So I've got my first coat, and then I've softened it with a coat and a half, basically, just with the whizzed up Mold Mix 6. Now I'm going to take my hairdryer and turn it on, and I'm going to put it on cool, and then just give it some air, and you'll see the shininess of the mold will begin to go away. So just keep working on that until all of a sudden it's almost like a thin layer starts to cover the Mold Mix 6. And then, like I said, you touch it, and if no material comes off on your finger, then you're ready for your next layer. So for now, I'll turn off the video, and we'll go to the next layer. And I'm not going to add my color dye yet, not until at least the 3rd layer. I just don't want dye in the first couple of layers. So, okay.
Hi, I'm back after 2 hours of letting this dry and then putting the hair dryer on the piece for about 15 minutes. And now I've added food dye to the Mold Mix 6 and I'll whiz it up with the hand mixer. And from there, we will start adding another layer onto the Mold Mix 6 piece. So, be a little bit of noise here. You'll see how thick it is right now. Once you start, really give it a good mix. Don't be afraid to really mix it in. See how it goes quite watery? We're also breaking up a lot of the fibers, which is really good. There we go. And now we'll just start, we'll put this hand mixer in water so that it can slag off. And now you have a lovely new color and quite a soft slurry. And I hope you can see the color change. It's not drastic, but that's all you need. But this coat will be nice and watery. Anyways, I'll keep on going with this one, and I'm trying to get to about 8 coats approximately. So I'll paint this and we'll be back.
I would just like to quickly show you how to, once you've got your mold to the thickness that you really want it to be, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add tiny little feet to the bottom. Build up a little bit of Mold Mix 6 just so that we can have a level mold. Make sure your table is level first. And you can see how I've made little feet here, that when this piece is turned over and you're ready to add glass, it will sit absolutely straight on the table and level. And then you can, once the wax is out, and you start adding glass, it will be much easier in the end. Thank you.
The topic that we're going to discuss here is the removal of the wax from your Mold Mix 6 image. And this requires a burnout or a melt-out process. So as you can see, I've got some safety considerations that I would like to talk to you about. First of all, the risks regarding microcrystalline wax is very important that you try not to breathe in microcrystalline. So the wax is inside the project, which we are going to melt out right now with the Tiger Torch. So as far as the fumes go, it's very important. I have a mask. I have with me, I have Kevlar gloves, or I have leather gloves to pick up the project if anything starts to flame on, which we don't really want, so I'll go over that as well. But you can see a mask to protect your breathing, and I'm going to be wearing a fire suit, a fire coat. It's very necessary to have protective clothing on. Glasses. So the equipment that we'll need for today is, I've got myself a metal container that the wax can drip into. Inside the metal container, I've got a stainless steel little pot that can collect the wax, because you can reconstitute the wax as well. Also, what I have is what's called a Tiger Torch on a propane tank, which I'll be using for melting out the wax. And as far as everything else goes, safety, it's really important to be in a ventilated room or in the outdoors. What we want to do is very, very slowly just start slashing your piece. You just want to get it, you just want the wax to start melting out slowly and evenly all the way around the piece. Don't forget to do a side or a corner, and it will start to smoke. You're almost curing the mold at the same time, too. Don't forget the top. I don't have a lot of flame on this right now. Just a soft flame. You don't want to catch the wax on fire if you can help it. But if you do, just pull back and stop. Okay, all the wax is basically out now. Now I can turn up the torch a little bit and you'll see it starting to blacken around the edges and stuff. That's only the mold curing itself. So don't be afraid to, because you just don't want to put this in the kiln and have all this burning off in the kiln. You might as well burn off all the particulates from the fibers out here.
Oh.
For small projects, you can use a heat gun instead of a tiger torch if for smaller pieces, for jewelry, or for more open face molds, and you're just trying to melt out the wax gently. This is the heat gun. You're just gonna put it over a small little area that will capture the wax, because you're not catching this on fire. All you're doing is melting out the wax. Okay, we've burned out the wax, melted out the wax with our tiger torch. Now I'm picked it up and I've brought it down to put in my kiln to take it to 1450 degrees to cure the mold, and also to get the soot out of the mold. So don't be afraid. When your piece comes off of the flame, you're going to see it looks black and sooty. Well, actually, when you take it to 1480, then all that is burned off and you're left with a beautiful pristine mold. So don't be nervous about the black. It just burns right off in the kiln, and that's why you're taking it to 1450 degrees Fahrenheit, just to cure the mold and to burn off all the soot.
There, all the carbon is out of the mold now after firing to 1480 degrees Fahrenheit, and it looks good. Now I'll put the bullseye shelf primer in and let that dry, and then spray with boron nitride, and we'll have a nice mold.